Hi everyone, today we'll be comparing the Prelude by William Wordsworth and Storm on the Island by Seamus Heaney, two poems that explore the power of nature and how it affects human understanding and emotion. We'll be using the four-step approach, so looking at title, structure, language, and any shifts in tone. This structure will help you build a confident exam response, and for more details on how to do this, make sure to check out my video on how to analyze any poem. First, let's look at the title of the Prelude. Now, this literally means an introduction or a beginning. This poem is actually an extract from a much longer autobiographical piece by Wordsworth, so the title reflects a personal introduction to something life-changing, and in this case, it's nature. So we know the narrator starts the poem off in a peaceful and reflective mood, but as the journey continues, nature becomes more powerful and even frightening. You can argue that the title hints at a spiritual awakening or an introduction to the sublime, which is an idea used by many romantic writers, especially Wordsworth. It's basically the idea of the overwhelming, almost divine power of nature that can both humble and enlighten us. Now, in contrast, Storm on the Island might sound like a weather forecast on the surface. However, when we look into this more, the word storm instantly gives a sense of danger, while island suggests isolation and vulnerability, which we know become prominent themes in the poem. Now, as we know, these become central themes to the poem, the idea of humans trying to stand strong against the uncontrollable forces of nature. Heaney originally titled the poem Stormont, which is the name of the Northern Irish Parliament building. So this gives the poem a potential political layer, hinting at conflict and instability in Northern Ireland. You don't have to include this in the exam, but if you remember it, it's a great way to show insight. So back to comparing the two poems, both titles show nature as something powerful that shapes human experience. Wordsworth is about internal, personal discovery, whilst Heaney's is more about external threat and tension. Okay, so now let's move on to structure. Both poems are written in blank verse, so that's unrhymed iambic pentameter. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because it makes it sound like natural speech. It gives the poem this personal, authentic voice, almost like we're inside the speaker's thoughts. If you want to discuss this in the exam, you can say that it mirrors the internal dialogue of the narrator. In the prelude, the flowing structure, with its use of enjambment, helps reflect the narrator's emotional journey. It's one long stanza which mirrors the smooth motion of the boat at first and then the overwhelming experience he has as nature reveals its true power. Now, the shift from calm to fear is gradual and smooth, mimicking how nature slowly takes over the speaker's emotions. It also feels nostalgic, like he's reflecting on this moment years later and realizing how important it was towards his personal growth. In Storm on the Island, we again have one stanza made up of 19 lines, but this time it feels much tighter and more compact. Just like the houses the speaker describes. He says, "We build our houses squat." The structure mirrors how the islanders try to create stability. But as the poem goes on, we feel the storm breaking through that control, and the enjambment here creates a sense of chaos. Lines running onto each other resembles their thoughts spiraling, just like the storm. This is shown in the phrase, "can raise a tragic chorus in a gale, so that you can listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too." You can also interpret the one stanza form as showing unity, the community standing together, but by the end, it feels more like a symbol of isolation and the relentless force of nature, which doesn't let up. So therefore, in your exam, you can discuss how this initially shows the united force of the islanders, but by the end of the poem, it echoes the idea of the power of nature. So to summarize, both poets use structure to reflect a journey. In the prelude, it's emotional and internal, and in Storm on the Island, it's physical and external, as we've said. But through the structure in both poems, nature is represented as the dominant force. Just a reminder, if you're finding this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Okay, so now let's look at the significance of language. Let's start with the prelude. So as we've said, Wordsworth uses a lot of romantic and peaceful imagery to begin with, and nature is also personified. This is exemplified in the phrase "led by her being nature, guiding him on this journey. It gives a sense of the relationship forming, one that's gentle and nurturing, but only at first. Because once the narrator sees the mountain, we see the tone immediately change. This is exemplified in the description, "a huge peak black and huge. This repetition of the word huge and the harsh plosive alliteration of black and peak show how suddenly intimidating nature becomes. The narrator's confidence disappears and is quickly replaced with fear. So of course this shows how nature wipes out everything comforting. It's no longer beautiful, it's overwhelming, and by the end the speaker reflects. He says there hung a darkness, call it solitude or blank desertion. So we can see here that he's been changed. He's not physically hurt, but he is emotionally shaken, which is key to the poem. This emphasizes that nature doesn't just dominate physically, but it also affects the mind. It dominates us psychologically. So now looking at Storm on the Island. The poem, as we said, starts really confidently. He says, "We are prepared." You can discuss the significance of this being a short sentence, showing his determination and confidence. However, this confidence soon crumbles, exemplified through the oxymoron exploding comfortably. This suggests that they felt safe until they realize they are not. The sea is violent, but it's distant, so the people are falsely reassured. We start to realize that the language becomes more militaristic. This is shown in phrases like, "We are bombarded by the empty air," and "the wind dives and strafes invisibly." Both these quotes use war metaphors. Words like bombarded and strafes paint nature as the enemy. The idea of being attacked by something invisible is terrifying and shows you how powerless the speaker suddenly feels. This is also reiterated in the ending line of this extract. The narrator says, "It is a huge nothing that we fear." This paradox is great to mention because the storm can't be seen, but its power is deeply felt, not just physically but psychologically by the islanders. And you can talk about the structural technique of this being used at the end of the poem to leave a lasting impact on the reader. Now, comparison-wise, both poems show nature as a complex. In the Prelude, nature is sublime. It inspires awe and then fear. In Storm on the Island, nature is hostile and unpredictable. You can even contrast the emotional impact. So in Wordsworth's poem, the narrator is changed from within, while Heaney's community is physically suffering. Both of these are a result of the power of nature. Okay, so now let's finally look at shifts in tone. As we've said, both poems start with a sense of control. So in the Prelude, the tone is peaceful and harmonious, and in Storm on the Island, the tone is confident and even slightly arrogant and naive. But as we've also said, this doesn't last. In the Prelude, when the mountain appears, there's a sudden shift to fear. You can identify this in your exam as Volta. Nature becomes vast and more powerful. The speaker even becomes more hesitant and even traumatized. In Storm on the Island, the shift comes as the storm intensifies. So as we've seen, the tone becomes anxious and panicked, and the earlier certainty that the narrator had breaks down. Now this is really crucial. Both poems end not with destruction, but with a kind of psychological realization. In the Prelude, the narrator realizes how small and powerless he is in the face of nature's magnitude. And in Storm on the Island, the narrator realizes that even nothing, to use his words, can be terrifying when you feel truly exposed. So just to summarize again what you can compare when discussing the shift in tone in these two poems, first thing is that both poems go from certainty to vulnerability. However, the shift in tone in Wordsworth's poem is more personal and reflective, while in Heaney's it's collective and physical. Both show that nature has the power to humble and reshape human thinking. Just as some final thoughts, if you do decide to go ahead and compare these poems in your exam, remember to focus on the themes of power of nature versus mankind, psychological versus physical impact, and the emotional journeys of the speakers. And of course, make sure to remember to discuss how language and structure support each of these themes in different ways. I hope this video has helped you get a clearer understanding of both poems and how you can compare them. Make sure to watch my full breakdown of Storm on the Island 2, where we go deeper into Heaney's use of language and structural techniques. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in my next video.